Every competitive team in MLB would love to add an arm or two at the deadline, but who's actually available? Let's take a look at the top pitchers that I think could be on the move at the 2025 MLB trade deadline. Before we get into the list, I want to go over the short list of guys I considered but didn't quite make it. Charlie Morton, veteran starter who's turned it around as of late, free agent at year's end. Kyle Finnegan, a middle reliever who has an expiring contract and probably could benefit from throwing more sliders. Former All-Star Gregory Soto, a hard-throwing lefty with an expiring contract. Andrew Heaney, a veteran lefty starter who could probably go to the bullpen. Free agent at the end of this year. Andrew Kitteridge, a pretty average slider-sinker reliever that has 2 years of team control. Paul Skenes, a former closer who's struggled in Cleveland and has a mutual option in his contract for 2026. Jacob Junis, starter-turned-reliever who has a good changeup. Andrew Chafin, veteran lefty on a 1-year deal. And Raisel Iglesias, who finished 11th in Cy Young voting 1 year, but now he's 1 year away from free agency in Atlanta. And there probably are some prospects that are going to get traded at the deadline that I would rather have than some of the guys on this list, but I'm not really going to go into any prospects as it's a lot harder to predict who's going to get traded from the prospects' point of view. Now let's get into some real deal honorable mentions. In all honesty, I probably should have made this a top 13 list, but that title really doesn't roll off the tongue. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about these guys. First off, Austin Gomber. And I know what you're thinking. This guy stinks. Career ERA around 5.6 this year. But let's not forget, he pitches in Coors Field. He's had 3 starts on the road, 3 starts at home. In those 3 starts on the road, he's only given up 6 runs compared to 12 in those 3 starts at home. He's also had 12 strikeouts on the road this year compared to just 2 in Colorado. Look, I know the Baseball Savant page doesn't look good in a projection standpoint, but I think a change of scenery could do wonders for Gomber. He's in the last year before free agency, and I think this could be an interesting flyer for a competitive team this year. Next up, I want to talk about Adrian Hauser, who's in the midst of a career year right now. Hauser is a 32-year-old journeyman who signed this past offseason with Texas to a minor league deal and was released in May before ever making it up to the majors for them. The White Sox picked him up, and he's been really good so far this year. 1.56 ERA with 39 strikeouts in 57 innings. Now, he's definitely getting a little bit lucky as his expected ERA is above 3.6, but if you're getting lucky as a part of the Chicago White Sox, I feel like it's a little bit more of a skill at that point. He's also a free agent at the end of the year. Then the last honorable mention goes to Mike Soroka, and I honestly would rather trade for him than number 10 on this list, but the actual production isn't quite there for Soroka right now. 5.35 ERA on the year in 13 starts, but his expected ERA is 3.21, which is better than 3/4 of the league. He also has an expected batting average against, strikeout percentage, and walk percentage better than 3/4 of the league. Hitters have a batting average of .126 against his slurve and have swung and missed at the pitch over 37% of the time. With this being Soroka's last year before free agency, I think that he could well outperform his value at the trade deadline. Watch out for a very smart team to trade for Soroka here. Now, with all the honorable mentions out of the way, we could finally move on to our top 10 list, starting out with Seth Lugo. And this is probably going to be a controversial placing for Lugo, especially with the 35-year-old finishing second in AL Cy Young voting just last year. And also last week, I saw him ranked as a top 10 pitcher in MLB via MLB's official Instagram account. But I might just have to say it, Seth Lugo might be the most overrated player in Major League Baseball right now. Yes, he has a 2.94 ERA in 18 starts. But when you take a look under the hood, all of the expected stats and anything that you're using to project the rest of the season for Lugo looks really bad. His expected ERA, hard hit rate, and chase rate are all in the bottom 20% in the league, with his expected batting average against and whiff rate also being in the bottom 30% of the league. I believe Seth Lugo is getting very lucky by playing in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Kansas City, something that is reflected in his road ERA being 3.49 compared to 2.48 while in Kansas City. And while Lugo is a decent enough pitcher that's able to keep hitters off balance with a 9-pitch mix, I would really only call his slow curveball a particularly strong pitch, and he only throws that about 5% of the time. I have a good feeling that Seth Lugo is going to be treated like a top arm on this trade market, and I don't believe he deserves that price tag at all. While I do believe that some organizations that are particularly savvy with advanced stats will stay away from Seth Lugo, I think that it could be a trap for other teams to trade for him. And for all those reasons, the 2024 Cy Young number 2 is starting this list off at number 10.
Now on to number 9, we have a very respected pitcher in MLB who's in the midst of his worst season of his career. Zach Gallen is going into his contract year in the worst form of his career. An ERA over 5, and all of the advanced stats do not look good for him either. But there are two distinctions I'm making between Gallen and Lugo. The first being, I don't think it's going to take as much to trade for Gallen as it would for Lugo right now, as Lugo has had more success on the field than Gallen has this year. Secondly, I think there's a chance that Gallen could bounce back and be a productive pitcher again. One thing that jumps out to me about Gallen is that his breaking balls, in particular, his slider, has not been very effective this year. The last time they have been this bad comparatively to the league was 2021. However, in 2022, Zach Gallen had his career year. Now only just at 30 years old, I don't see a reason that he can't make an adjustment again and have a solid year in the second half or next year. At the end of the day, I think you're going to get good value trading for a pitcher with a good reputation right now. Success is not guaranteed by any means, but I think I'd rather take the risk on Gallen than I would with Lugo. At number 8, we have our first reliever of the list, and that's Sir Anthony Dominguez. He was acquired by Baltimore at the trade deadline last year, and he's been a pretty solid high leverage reliever for them. He's a big strikeout guy, and his splitter and sweeper have been very effective for him this year, especially the splitter. However, while he is one of the elite strikeout getters in the league, he is one of the worst at giving up walks. He will also give up the occasional home run, but I think the reward outweighs the risk here, as if you need a strikeout, you'll call Sir Anthony Dominguez, and he will strike out that batter over 30% of the time. Dominguez isn't going to be your everyday closer, but I do think he's going to be a very valuable arm for a team down the stretch. At number 7, we got a 2-for-1 deal, because theoretically, they could be a 2-for-1 deal. Dennis Santana and David Bednar are two pitchers that I think are closing caliber pitchers, but they're both getting it done in different ways. Bednar is a big strikeout guy who will give up the occasional hard hit ball. Santana doesn't rack up a lot of strikeouts, but he limits walks and quality contact. Both of these guys are under contract until 2026, meaning that they have 2 years of team control. But with the Pirates looking like they're not going to be competitive anytime soon, I think both of these closers will be available at the deadline. To me, I can't really choose if I'd rather have Santana in the midst of his breakout season or Bednar in the midst of a bounce-back year. Or hey, maybe they'll go as a package deal, somewhat like Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto did last year from Philadelphia. Number 6 is the A's big offseason acquisition, Luis Severino, and the rumor is that the A's are actively shopping him on the trade market as we speak. And I really don't blame them. His 0-9 record at home with a 6.68 ERA leads me to believe that Sacramento might not be the city for Severino. Compare that to a 3-2 record on the road with a 3.10 ERA. I think it's easy to see why a change in scenery might be in order for Severino here. He is owed $25 million next year and has a $22 million option in 2027, which might both be overpays if this is the production we can expect from him going forward. But I still have hope that Severino can find his prime form again. His fastball velo really hasn't fallen, and he's still avoiding hard contact. While the strikeout numbers are disappointing this year, I think the big confounding variable here is that he has to prep for games in a minor league ballpark, which might not be his cup of tea. I like him for any team other than Tampa Bay and the Yankees. At number 5, we got Edward Cabrera, and he's a very well-rounded pitcher. He's above average at pretty much anything you would want from a pitcher, except for limiting hard contact, where he's slightly below average. He's got a high velo fastball sitting around 97 miles per hour, but his changeup is really his best pitch. His secondary pitch being his 97 mile per hour sinker, which probably leads you to the conclusion that yes, he is good at inducing ground balls. But you're probably wondering, if it all accumulates in him being an average value pitcher, why is his trade value so high? Well, that's because he's under control until 2028 before becoming a free agent. And at 27 years old, Edward Cabrera could be a contributor on a playoff contender right now and in the near future. At number 4, I have a pitcher that in many ways is very similar to Edward Cabrera, Merrill Kelly. Kelly is a pretty average MLB pitcher whose changeup is his best pitch, just like Cabrera. Kelly doesn't have the fastball velo that Cabrera does have, but he's done a really good job this year at getting hitters to chase out of the zone with his breaking balls. What gives Merrill Kelly the slight edge over Edward Cabrera on my list is that Merrill Kelly's on-field production has been a little bit better this year, and he's on the last year of his contract, meaning that it will probably be easier to trade for him than it is for Cabrera. Merrill Kelly, from KBO strikeout leader to top arm, traded at the MLB trade deadline. Quite a unique career. At number 3, we have the most dominant pitcher on the list so far, and that is closer Felix Bautista. And with the Orioles out of it early, it looks like Bautista, who's under contract through 2027, might be available at the deadline. I don't think there's a team that wouldn't like to have Bautista in their bullpen. He's got a power sinker that's coming in at 97 miles per hour, an unbelievable splitter that has an opponent batting average of .087, and a pretty good slider too. He has an expected batting average against of .163, which is in the 100th percentile of the league, and he strikes out more than 35% of the batters he faces. On the downside, he is pretty bad at limiting walks and below average at limiting hard contact. But pre-Tommy John surgery in 2023, he was debatably the best closer in the league, and he showed me enough already this year that he's on track to being in that top echelon of closers once again. Now we're on to number 2, and we got Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. Joe Ryan was an all-star this year, and rightfully so. He's been dealing. A 2.72 ERA and 121 strikeouts and 109 innings pitched this year. Despite having a pretty below-average fastball velocity of 94 miles per hour, he's had great success throwing that fastball and sinker this year. His sweeper and splitter have also been pretty good for him this year, although when he does give up the big hit, it's usually on a mistake of one of those two pitches. But at the end of the day, if you get Joe Ryan, you're getting a starting pitcher that can go out there and get you a quality start with a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks, and probably not a lot of runs given up. He is under contract through 2027, so the Twins could hold out and ask for a big return in a Joe Ryan trade. But if you are a competing team with a lot of prospects to cash in right now, Joe Ryan is an ace that you can get for the next 2.5 years. Before we get into that number 1 spot, I want to go over a list of guys that I think have less than a 50% chance of getting traded at the deadline, but I have seen rumors about, and one is Emmanuel Clase, and he's under contract through 2028 on a very team-friendly deal, and I think the Guardians value that more than really any other team that would be trading for him. I think he stays in Cleveland. Carlos Estevez was an all-star this year, and he's under contract through 2027. I think the Royals think they're going to be competitive, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, and want to keep him around. Johan Duran is under contract through 2027, and he's been so good lately, and the Twins' bullpen is looking a little thin. I think they want to keep him around. The Angels signed Yusei Kikuchi to a massive deal through 2027, and I don't think that it's going to be easy to trade, and he seems to be their guy. Mitch Keller under contract through 2028. He's got too much team control for the Pirates to give him up right now. Same goes for Paul Skenes. Sorry, Yankees fans, it's not happening. The Rockies may have finally found a good reliever for them, and that's Jake Bird. Don't see him being traded easily when he's under control through 2028. This Braves roster is too good to be this bad. Chris Sale stick around for next year. Nick Martinez is a free agent at year's end, but he's getting paid too much right now to move at the deadline, and I do not think Cincinnati is going to eat some of his contract to see him play for a different team. And of all these pitchers, the most likely to be moved is probably Sandy Alcantara, but this is such a low value point for him, and he's under contract through 2027. I think Miami should hang on to him, let him regain his form, and be a mentor for some of the young pitchers in Miami. But now back to our number 1 spot, and that is 26-year-old left-handed ace Mackenzie Gore. The national starter is one of the premier strikeout pitchers in the game right now. With him being under control through 2027, I didn't really think there would be much of a chance of him getting moved at the deadline, but the Nationals are apparently hearing offers for him, and with their past record of trading young stars at good value, I think that a Mackenzie Gore trade could be on the table. And if that is true, I think that he is going to be the top arm on the market this year. 95-mile-per-hour fastball, a really good curveball, and an absolutely filthy slider. The one-time top prospect has gotten better in every year that he's played in the MLB so far and is hitting his peak right now in 2025. And with him still being young, I think this trajectory could still be on the up. An all-star in 2025, I don't think there's a single team that wouldn't want to have him in their rotation. It's gonna take a lot to get him, and with this front office, maybe they want to even extend him and not trade him at all. But for me, Mackenzie Gore is the #1 pitcher in the MLB trade market for 2025.
Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, drop a like and let me know in the comments who you want your favorite team to trade for.